Hello and welcome to this Distant Worlds Universe how-to video. In this episode we will focus on designing ships or bases. And there was a post on Facebook asking for that particular subject, and the user who asked that question wanted just the basic ships and base design, not how to design a fighter, or how to design a defensive base or such and such, just a very basic design guideline. So to that end, let's go ahead and create a new design from scratch. Now it's worth mentioning that I am running a game in a very late stage, um, with almost all the technology research. The reason I do that is so that I have flexibility of to choose the components. So when you design your ships, you might not get all of these components, but you will most likely get similar ones. So where to start? First of all, there's this gigantic red box in the middle with warnings, and any viable design must have all of these warnings removed. So for example, our design need to have a reactor component, must have command center, must have few storage cells, must have a name, must have a role, so on and so forth. And so we will work to address all of those. To the left is where we pick our role and graphics of the ships or base. So let's do that now. Let's go ahead and design let's just design an escort. Now here are all the type of the roles that you can assign, and you can obviously pause the video to read this list, or just go to your game and look at the list. All of these ships, the role for ships, we have the stage ships, the fighting ships, we have escort through capital ships, and then troop transport and carrier and resupply ships and exploration ship. Now there's no difference between the escort and the capital ships designations. The AI will usually not put escort and frigates into fleets, and they will usually send escort out to escort freighters and so on and so forth. So if you have automated ships, that's what they will be based on. If you manually control the ships or fleets, then these do not have any kind of difference. They're just ships. Troop transport meant to transport troops, so when you design these you will need to have a troop module. Similarly, carrier are special because they need to have fighter bay, so on and so forth. Resupply ships must have mining components. But other than that, other than the must-have, you can design your ships to do, or base to do, whatever you want them to do. You can have your capital ship have mining components so they can mine hydrogen if you on a gas giant if you would like. So basically that covers the role. Now underneath there are 4 drop downs. The first 2 are what to do when you are in a fight. So you have 4 options. You can evade, which means the ships would actually not run away, it's just try to get out of the opponent's weapon range. And this is great when I design carrier or things that carry a lot of fighter base, and just strictly use the fighters as a weapon. Standoff means it will try to stay as at the maximum weapon range. All weapons mean it will try to get into a range where all weapons are useful or can be fired, and point blank is self-explanatory. It will go as close to the target as possible. The same thing applies to weaker components. So I think by default most of these will have a standoff for stronger and point blank for weaker, depending on the race and the customization on the mod. But most of the time they are like that. Now point blanks are great for weapons that have diminishing returns. For example, the Titan beam here will lose some damage for every distance, so you want to be as close as possible to the target before you fire the weapon. But for other weapons, let me sort by category so I can get all the weapons together. For example, if you use something like a railgun, which should be here somewhere, but I can't find. Oh, here we go, massive railgun. These do not have any drilled off between this whole range. So his whole range is 300, and there's no reason to get to point blank range if that's your design, because you just let the opponent, if they use something with range reducing damage, then if you get to their range, and you just get hit more. So all weapon would be better in that case. And then next is invasion. This is also very important if you have troops module on your ships, so especially troop transport. So you have do not invade when clear and immediately. So do not invade. If you have do not invade, then they will never invade a planet. If you have invade when clear and you order them to attack a planet, they will wait until all the defensive structure have been cleared out, and so you won't be able to send just a fleet of troop transport to attack a defend planet, for example. And invade immediately is just that. Oh, just try to go and drop troops immediately. And then the last one is when they will flee. For example, by default, the exploration ships or colony ships will flee when enemy sighted. And that is probably suboptimal by most of the time. Usually I will switch that to flee when attacked, because sometimes the other ships are doing other things. They're not moving toward my ships, and there's no reason for them to flee just because of that. And then the next three are well, when the attack means when there's someone targeting them, then they'll flee. The next three are conditioned on shield and armors, so either shield at 50% they'll flee, or shield at 20% they'll flee, or when armor is reduced to 50% or shield is 20%. This is what I usually use for my warships, and never means well they will stay there until they die. And this is what I usually assign for my troop transport. Their job is to get to the planet and drop their troops and not try to flee. So since we'll design an escort, let's go ahead and do these settings. And I don't know what these will be yet, because I don't know what weapons I'll put in yet. So the next three boxes here are for the icon of the ship, and you can pick whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. This looks like a cool ship, so I'll use that. And then if you find that it takes up too much space on the map with these icons when you zoom in, especially for bases, or when you have a base that's bigger than the planet it's orbiting on, it's helpful to scale the image back to, let's say, 50%, so 0.5, and that'll make the icon or the image of the design smaller. It also helps because if the spaceport is covering the planet, it's very difficult to click underneath it to do things like load troops and stuff like that. So I always scale my spaceport back for that reason, so that when I have a huge spaceport on top of a planet, I can still interact with the planet. But for our little escort, let's just set it back to none. Now, on the right over here, you have the summary of the design. So you have energy, movement, industry, and defense summary. And down here you have weapon summary, and this is just a little information box. Over here you have the list of all the components. You can uncheck this checkbox to get things that are not latest, and the reason to do this could be um, twofold. For example, if you have different armors that require different um, type of resource and you don't have a particular type of resource, you might want to not build the latest. Or sometimes you want to you research something. For example, if I do this and go down to the shield, because I have a whole bunch of different shields, sometimes if you research a shield afterward, so make that the latest design, but it's not as good as something that you researched before or found, you might want to do that in order to get to the right type of uh, tech level that you want and resources you want. And then in the middle is the actual list of components, and there's a button here that shows the construction summary, so that you can actually see how the ship's being built. And that's actually very, very important, because a ship or base is only functional when certain conditions are met. For example, it must have a command center for it to work. So I generally will build a command center first, with some exception. There are components that do not require command center to work, and so when I build a spaceport from scratch anyway, I would build it with medical and recreational center first, because when these guys get built, the planet get their effect immediately, even before the base become functional. So to build them first means that I can just order the build, and a few days later the planets become significantly more happy, even though the base has not been built. But since we're building a ship, let's not worry about that. So we need to build a command center first. Actually, since the ship is, let's just build a ship first, and then we'll talk about other things. And then a ship would not functional unless you have habitation module for the crew and life support for them. And it will not function without reactors. So let's add some reactors. Then the reactors do two things. First of all, they generate energy from fuel, and secondly, they store energies for later for the usage. So when you click on any of these components, the information is here, and there's an energy output and storage. So I believe the energy output is how much it will generate, let's say per unit of time, let's say a second. So this thing can store about 2.5 seconds, or more than 2 seconds anyway, worth of energy. So when this is very helpful when you have weapons that use a lot of energy up front, more than the capacity of the generator to produce, but not the capacity to store. Okay, and as you can see, we now have a lot less red warnings, which means errors. You must have cleared all these before you can build it. And we start having a couple yellow warnings. So these are suggestions. You don't have to have any of these for the design to work. However, the game said that you should. So what I usually do for design that I build from scratch is after the reactor, I'll add in shield. So now at this point of the build, the ship is, or the base is sitting duck. When they get shot at, they will just um, get damaged and die. One thing I forgot to do, I also put a repair bot in here, even before all these things. So go ahead and clear all these things out and add them back in. So we command center, happen life, the reactor, and then shield. Now, as you can see here, the reason are twofold. First of all, with just that one component, your damage reduction is now 60%, so you only take 40% of damage to begin with. So that give the ships a chance to survive, or the base survive the initial attack. And it also can repair components by itself as well. I don't know if it requires the base to be sort of functioning or not, but it seems to work. And then the next thing I'll do is add energy collector, especially on bases. So now, and then of course we'll add a lot more components down here. But at this point of the build, the base is functional because we have a command center, we have life and life support, we have a reactor, and more importantly, right after this collector is built, it will start charging the reactor with the energy it collects from the star, even before you have fuel, even before you have fuel cells, anything like that. And once there's energy, the shield will charge. And so at this point, this design, whether or not it's a base or ships, we start charging shield. And that means that when it's fully built, the shield will be fully charged or partially charged. And even when it's being attacked while it's being built, it has the ability to defend itself a little bit with the shield. So after the shield, generally I will stick in armors for the same reason, and then assault pod if I have them, or I might even switch the order, just because I will build a few assault pod but many armors. The nice thing about assault pod is that since these things are sitting duck while they're being built, they the enemy can try to capture it, and with the assault pod we have a lot more boarding defense. That's why I built it up front. So after the armor, I'll build the targeting system and countermeasure. Actually, I build countermeasure and then targeting. I build these before I build the weapons, just because they're only one piece and they add a significant percentage to all these, all the weapons. And then, depending on the design, if I want, but the next part here will be my offensive capability. So let's give it a name first. And by the way, if you put a suffix of mark X at the end of the design, and when you upgrade it, the game will automatically change that the suffix. So if I upgrade this one, it becomes a mark 2. If you don't have it, then it will add a mark something at the end of it. Okay, so we add countermeasure and targeting. Then the next one would be some offensive capability. Now I generally add my fighter base or 2 onto my escort, but that's just my preference. And then I'll add the weapons. So we have different kind of weapons here. We have phasers, beam weapons, railguns, tractor beams, area gravity weapons, ions weapons and defense, and point defense, more special weapons, torpedoes, missile, and bomb. So generally, my ships will have one or two kind of weapons. I will add an ion defense just because that way we don't get them becomes incapacitated by ion weapons. Now, talking about weapons, we have standoff weapons such as our torpedoes up here. Maybe not up here, down here. The Plasma Thunderbolt is currently the best torpedo weapons. It has a high range, 990 range. It deals quite a bit of damage, 50 damage. You can actually click the component guide to get a better picture of it. However, it loses 4 damage per 100, so at maximum range it loses about 5 times 4, which is 20, so it only deals 30 damage, almost 60% of the damage at that range. And it fires every 2 seconds. The other one is the missile. And click on the wrong button. So the missile has the same range, has a lot less damage, 28, but it's 28 constantly, and it fires slower, and it uses, I believe, less energy. So 18 here versus 64. So this uses significantly more power, which means you have to add more reactors to power them. But I think at this point of the technology, the Plasma Thunderbolt is probably my preferred weapon over the missile, even though I've used them both to great effect. And in this particular game you see in the background, I exclusively use assault missile and railgun. I do not use any kind of beam weapons at all, and it turned out pretty well for us. So let's decide what to use. Let's add a few Plasma Thunderbolt, and you can see here this is the damage versus range graph for each weapon. You can have a quick visualization of it. And so those are the long range weapon. The short range weapons, we have the phaser at range 500, the Titan beam at range 550, 560. The phaser again do not lose damage over the range. It has a slightly shorter range, but it will deal more damage. And it also has a 10% targeting bonus and more effective against armor compared to the Titan beam, which deal less damage but has a slightly longer range. But it fires faster as well. So each of these, you can calculate the damage per second of how each of these do over range, and you can optimize the heck out of your design. But generally, you'd pick one design for your ships, and you stick with it, and then you research that to the end, because you get a lot better bang for your buck that way. And also, I forgot to mention, you can see here that each of these components require certain things. For example, the Titan beam required a lithium crystal, tellurios, iridium, and chromium. Again, if you don't have that, then you might want to switch to weapons that you do have. Resources to build. So go and grab a couple phaser lands for short range, medium range combat, and then railgun for short range. Now Generally, I will not build something with this mix of weapons, because for my um, standoff ships, for example, the large ships, I would just focus strictly on the torpedoes and skip out all these things. I might still have a couple railguns just in case somebody get right on top of me, because railguns, even though they have target handicap, railguns will bypass shield, but it does have a 50% less effect against armor. So railguns are great weapons to get at the very beginning of the game, because if you have to deal with pirates and when they go to raid you, they have to be right on top of you, which is in range of the railgun. And once you do damage, and when early game, the ships have very low armor or shield, so they will definitely trigger these conditions very quickly, and so you can get the ships to run away before they manage to do any damage to you. Okay, so what else are the considerations? So now we must have fuel storage, thrust engine, vectoring engine, and then we need more half life and hyperdrive and things. So let's go ahead and add some of those. So the fuel cells under storage. So let's go ahead and add one. Then let's add some engines under engine, vortex engine, and a thrust engine, and then a hyperdrive that's under hyper. And then let's clear out these red warning first, and then we'll talk about these summary over here. So now this ships can be built. It's not very good, but it can be built. So here, first of all, the summary of energy. You can see that we have one reactor producing 260 unit of energy per unit of time, and we have a static energy usage. Some of these components have a static energy usage. For example, the command center used 2 energy statically, and so all those add up to 19. So the reactor will power those constantly, and therefore there's only 241 excess energy left to use for anything. Now my reactor is really good now, but at the early game it will not produce this kind of power, which brings us to the next section. I'll come back to this a little bit, but the next section is movement and energy usage. You can see the dashed line here. That's the static energy usage, and we only use 19, so that's not a whole lot. But when you design bigger ships, they will use a lot of energy statically, so you must make sure that you can satisfy that demand. And then whatever excess, you can see here that your engine use energy. So for our hyperdrive, it used 105, which is well within the range of this. But at the early game, you will need more reactors in order to meet this demand. Otherwise, the hyperdrive will be very slow. So that's a trade-off. If you can't build a ship big enough to handle all of these requirement, then you just have to satisfy that. And by the way, the size of the ship is currently 251, and I don't know how big of a ship we could build right now, but that's dependent on your technology. And at the beginning, I think the size might be just 200. So in order to do that, you might need to nix these fighter bays, for example, in order to fit all these components in. Okay, and the next thing is the speed of the ship. So there are 3 types of speed, I believe. I'm not sure what the impulse one is, but there's cruise and sprint. So sprint is when the ships want to go and attack a target, or something of that nature. It will try to sprint, and the speed depends on your engine. So we have this Vortex engine, which is, I think, top of the line. It produces a lot of thrust. So with a couple of these, our speed will be very quite decent. But when you have an early game engine, then you need to add a lot more of it to get any kind of speed. And then the cruise speed is when I believe is when it just try to go to a target. So go to a spaceport to dock, to repair, to refuel, things like that, or just move around and not attacking. That's the cruise speed. Or when it's, I don't know, when it's trying to build up its hyperdrive charge to jump. So a couple other things, information here. So depending on your reactors, we have our hyperfusion reactor over here. It uses hydrogen. Early game reactors will use gasoline, so make sure you have that. Fuel capacity is how many our fuel cells can store, and this ship can store with this one fuel cell can store 120 fuel. The energy storage is how much the reactor can store, and then this is how efficient the reactor is. So we only use 2.52 fuel units per 1,000 energy units, and all that is calculated to the range of the ships, how much it will, how long it can go before it burn out all the fuel for the generate energy for the drives. For this particular ship is 7.58 sectors, which is quite nice. Generally in early game, you can only get a few sectors at best. And then the last one is over here is the turn rate, so how fast your ship can turn and reorient itself to attack, to flee, and things like that. The next summary part is the industry. So our ships here doesn't have any because it's an escort ship. It doesn't need any of it. But if you design a freighter, then you need to worry about cargo capacity, how much it can carry. If you design a troop transport or a base, then you will want to add medical. If you want to design a spaceport or a resort base, and you want recreational. And then you have research, mining, manufacturing, construction, and docking bays. So those are the mining and manufacturing is self-explanatory. To get mining, you just need to add mining component. I think they are under extraction. So there's three kinds. You can add a gas mining component, a regular resource mining, or a luxury resource mining. And as long as your ships have these components in it, you can tell them to go to a planet and mine it. Well, it also need to have cargo, and it will mine until the cargo is full, and then it will go and dump it off at a spaceport somewhere. So under storage, you have different kind of cargo. You can have regular cargo where you can just put resource and things. You have passenger compartment where you can carry passengers. You can have docking bay, so the other ship can dock with this structure, whether or not there's a ship base. If you design a base where there's a lot of traffic, you might want to add a lot of docking bays. A fuel cell we already add. Every design should have some fuel cells so that they can store fuel for the reactor. And then you have troops transport. So once you have troops compartment, then you can carry troops. I highly recommend that you only have your troop transport carry troops, because otherwise your random ship will try and pick up all your troops everywhere. It's not a good thing. For construction, we have these things up here. You can build a construction yard, which means this ship can go around and build things. However, I find it out whether or not it's a bug, I don't know, but if you build a construction yard on anything but a construction ship, the structure that it built will not be anchored correctly to the planetary body. So be mindful of that. So if you play as pirate, don't try to go and build a tiny constructor that that can be built in your spaceport and not your planet, because those constructor, while they can repair things, they don't build things very well. And then the last things are the manufacturing. So if you want to build a spaceport, you need some of these. Another lab of the plant. Um, so these plan will build components specific to that category. And you need at least one of those each if you want to build ships and things. And actually, I believe because there's a bug in the game, you only ever need one each of these to satisfy your construction yard, because the speed is like 36,000 compared to a construction yard a speed of 500. So you can produce a lot of like one of those can handle 36,000 divided by 500 is like 70, yeah, 70 construction yard each, something like crazy like that. So down here you have your defense summary. You have your shield and how fast it recharge. Shield area recharge, how fast it will recharge other ships around it. You need this area recharge component to do that. You have armor and reactive armor strength, how well it deal with low damage, countermeasure, fleet countermeasure, stealth, boarding defense, damage reduction, repair components. And then over here is your firepower. So you have the summary firepower of the ships, and if you're fighters, how targeting, you have extra targeting. If you have fleet targeting bonus, they'll add that there as well. How many troops you have, boarding assault, hyper deny, point defense. Oh, that's the other thing I want to add. So point defense weapons are good against fighters. So if you have a structure that is not movable and is susceptible to fighters, then you definitely want to add a lot of these into it. And then the other are tractor beams. So tractor beams operate based on how you set these. So if you have standoff against opponents, then tractor beam will try to push them away outside to the max range. And if you have all weapons or point blank, then it will try to pull them closer. Okay, and I think that is the general design. And then after all that, you can click on the construction summary, and you can see the build order of this design. So I'll build the command center first, assuming it has all the resources, and then I'll build the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And again, like I was saying earlier, as soon as this is built, then it will start charging the reactor, and which in turn charging shields. And then when these weapons are built, they can start firing as well, because they can draw power from the reactor, even though you don't have few cells for the reactor to work with. There is the how-to ships. A base is very similar. Let me go ahead and just load a base that I have design. Look at the small spaceport. And as you can see here, I built it roughly in that same order. So I have 2 repair bots, just in case one got damaged. I do want to have some redundancy, and then happen life, and then shield, reactors, then collector. These order doesn't really matter that all that much, but once at least one of these collector is built, then the shield will start charging. And then, like I mentioned before, at the medical center, recreation center here, so that the planet can be happy. I didn't add them up front because I don't know whether or not they work without these or not, but they will definitely work at this point. Oh, they do use static energy, so they do need some sort of reactor to have power for them to work. And then I build my armors, and then I build fighters. I like to use fighters again, so and especially for bases, that's how they can further their reach. And then I have my missile and my guns, and point defense. And then have assault pods and combat targeting and countermeasure and iron defense and tractor beams. The trace scanner allows you to scan pirate smuggling ships. I have hyper deny so that when, especially for bases, if you only damage a ship or try to retreat with hyper deny, it has to get out of the range of this hyper deny before it can jump, and that might be enough for your missile or fighters to take to finish it off, because otherwise it's very annoying when they jump out, repair themselves, come back, and it's just a stalemate. So this way, with hyper deny, when you have it, it allows you to completely force those ships that attack you to commit to that attack and can't just jump in and out. And of course, I have my shield area recharge, so that any ships around me can be benefit from that. I have my fuel cells, my cargo bay. You don't need cargo bay on a spaceport because it will share its cargo capacity with the planet below. However, it just feel weird to not have cargo bay on my design, so I add them anyway. And then it need a commerce center to do transaction. This is what gives you tax on trading. Then have 10 docking bays for my small spaceport. I have an energy to fuel converter, which take the energy collection here and will convert it to fuel. This is a very, very end game tech, so you won't get this until much later on. And lately I've added passenger compartment to my spaceport because sometimes I build them over planet with resort bonus, and I want to have that there to collect it. My small spaceport only have 3 construction yard and 1 plant each, because they're meant to be an outpost. They are not meant to be building ships there. Ships can go there to repair, but they're not building new ships there. And also, these are later game tech as well. I have these area transient singularity, which is an area gravity weapons. They're really cool, so I add them. And then gravity well projector. This force the opponent's ships to drop out hyperspace within that radius, which means that they cannot jump right on top of you and attack, and which means that if you have fighters, when they drop out of space, then you have the upper hand. So I add those to all my spaceport as well. And what I end up doing usually is take one of these design and copy it. So for example, I would copy this into my mining gas mining station. So as you can see, they are very, very similar in design, except that I take out all the construction equipments, and I added in the extraction components, so the gas and luxury resource extractor and cargo base, of course. And also I add scanner to my gas mining station so that I can cover the map with them. So that is about it. I will probably have a uh, episode for very specific design, what to design if people think that is a what they would like to see. But if not, this is an episode just on general how to design something. So please comment um, on episode. Just let me know what you like or don't like about it, and so that I can tailor future episode to that. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.